How are you? Yeah, doing well. Sounds good.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, we've been like sorting everything out this morning, me and Joelle.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
Here we are. I
Yeah.
guess that we have to wait some minutes, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think Joelle should be joining soon.
Well, perfect.
Hi, Fenya. How are you? Oh, I think you're on mute, Fenya.
Okay, I was advising my director that the connection link has changed.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. No worries. Sorry about that. That all happened this morning.
It's okay. Fingers crossed we don't lose anything, anybody.
Hello, Fenia. How are you doing?
Jorge,
Nice to see you.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. We'll see.
Yes.
It's gonna go nice. That's
Yes.
for sure.
Yes. Maybe you have the names of the 2 or 3 people that you can interview after the presentation of the thermal dome site.
No, I only have one that even last night he hasn't confirmed, but he was rearranging the schedule because he's gonna be in Belize. He's the general secretary of the CCAD, and he told me that he really wants to be here. So let me check if he's gonna join us.
Okay. Anyway, you will have the hand to share the floor with him. So you need to know exactly who can speak, but it was just in case to know.
Yeah, I let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Charlene.
Hi.
Hi, David. I'm just sending the PowerPoint now. I just saw your email.
Okay, I'm on mute. Yeah, right. Hi.
Hi, David. How are you doing? Nice
Hi.
to see you.
Hi, Jorge. This is a good day for us, I hope. So this is all good news. Fenian,
Yes.
see you.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my.
And Laurie, you're on. I see. Joelle. Charlene, I haven't met you. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Joel's colleague.
All right. Oh, well, excellent. Oh, from the UBO. Excellent. Nice to see you.
Yes. Maybe we can add our the name of our organizations in the.
Yeah, good idea.
This, and I will invite everybody to do it at the beginning.
Remind me how to do it, please. So I go into.
You can just press the three dots, like on your picture. There should be three dots in the upper right corner, and then press rename.
Oh, I got you. So I just add Sargasso Sea Commission, do I?
Yeah, sounds good. I think we might have some attendees coming in, so I'm going to let them in.
All right, spelt it correctly. Yep. Joelle, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, bonjour, Joel.
Hola, Jorge.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, ¿y tú?
Bien, gracias.
That PowerPoint didn't come through yet, Faye.
Okay, it might be a little bit of a big file. It might take a little bit.
Oh, it is. It is.
Cool.
Hey, can you just put me as a co-host, maybe? Thanks.
Definitely, yeah. Thanks.
Oh, wow. You've really gone for a more modern update on it, haven't you? All right.
No
Looks
pressure.
nice. Yeah, okay. Can live with that. Look, I like it.
Okay. Yeah, no worries if you want to use the old one.
No,
So-
use yours. Use yours. That's great. Lovely.
Cool.
Kicking and screaming into the 21st century, huh? So I had a little correspondence with Janique last night saying, wouldn't it be great if you could announce that you've signed the agreement with us today? And she said she would speak to her colleagues and see if it, so we're hoping to have a surprise. Don't want to spoil it, but it would be tremendous. Yeah, okay. I prefer to run it myself because I've got to go through it quickly. But do you want to just run through it? Oh, that's you're right. Okay, you're good, aren't you? Right, brilliant.
I'm going to leave this one up, I think.
I suppose I'm gonna handle my presentation from this end, or I have to send it.
Yeah, if you're comfortable doing it yourself, then you can share it on your end, but you can also send it to me as a backup.
I can do it from my end, no problem.
Hi, Faye.
Everyone.
Hi.
Morning.
Hello, David. Hello, everybody else.
Good morning.
As we've got a few minutes, do you mind if I just check my share screen and see if I can make sure it's going to go all right? Is all right?
No problem.
Is that okay? All right, here we go.
Yeah, sounds good.
Fantastic, David.
Is that all right? That's okay. All right, so I have to do the. All right. Oh, you see, it's fantastic because Faye edited it up for me. It's the same content, how it just looks better. All right. So
I like the octopus.
isn't that lovely? Faye found this young, well, he's not that young, is he? But another Bermudian photographer who's got a wonderful spread of pictures. So she's really.
I don't think we mentioned an octopus in our science case. Well, we should revise it.
That's right. So we need the Latin name then, Faye, please.
Oh, of the octopus?
Yeah.
Well, I can make one up. It's all right.
Oh, and Cyril, nice to see you. When you wave, my hand disappears in the ocean, right? Where is it? There we go. Paul, great to see you too.
Likewise.
Hi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Cyril. Yes.
Bonjour Janique. Bonjour Joël, contente de te retrouver. David is here.
We're on mute, so good morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, David. We have signed it.
Hooray!
Okay.
You have to announce that to everybody, so that's wonderful. Tremendous. Thank you so much. That's only the beginning. We've still got another 4 or 5 agreements to finalize, but that's the most important one. So I'm reading our instructions. So you want all the speakers to keep their mic and camera on? Joel?
Well, when you're speaking, yeah, keep your mic and camera on, but you don't have to when you're not.
Right, okay, good, okay.
Morning, David. This is Pat.
Morning, great, thanks for joining. I know it's a busy week for you, right? First week of
Oh, yes.
new semester, so thank you, I appreciate it.
No worries. I just wanted to check that we're going to have permissions to share our screens when we do our presentation. So
Are you running that?
Thanks.
Faye, you're on mute.
Sorry, yes, yeah, you will have permissions for that, for sure.
So she's running it, yeah.
Thank you, Faye.
Yeah, just everyone, as a reminder, we would like you to rename yourself with the name of your organization, if that's all right. Like include your name and then the name of your organization. And you can do that by clicking the 3 dots over your picture and then pressing rename.
Faye, could you email us the link to the agenda as well, please? I might have got my printer on a different computer.
Sorry, yeah, I'll send it to you, David.
Thank you.
So I think it's time to start now. So thank you everybody for your interest and for joining the online official launching of the SARGADOM FFEM project. For me, I'm very happy to see that the project will be launched all over. Although we are not able to make it physically due to the current context, but it has been a great history since the idea of the project and the designing the concept and the contributions of our partners, and we had really great times working on writing down this project and gathering all the partners together. And so I'm very happy today to present with the partners from the MarViva Foundation, the Sargasso Sea Commission, and the University of Brest, next to the French Biodiversity Agency. What are the plans for the SARGADOM project? So I will share my screen just to present you the agenda. So I think it's here. Can you see my? I think there are other windows inside.
That looks great. We can just see the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay. And now, is it okay?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
okay, thank you. So a quick view on the agenda. You might have received just a few hours before, in the morning for some of you, and in the afternoon for some others. So we will have a series of speeches and presentations, starting with the FFEM, the French Facility for Global Environment, an introduction speech by the General Director of the French Biodiversity Agency. We'll have also a presentation from His Excellency, the French Ambassador in charge of the ocean, Serge Ségura. And then we will continue with the presentation of the two pilot sites, the two demonstration sites that we are studying in the SARGADOM project. The presentation of the action plan that will be developed in the next years, and then a series of our partners that will be contributing to the technical and scientific works of the SARGADOM project. And then we will have a general discussion. So for the series of speeches and presentations, we will take some time just for one or two short questions that you can ask in the chat, please. And with the help of my colleagues, Faye and Joël, I can forward your questions to the speakers. And then for the general discussion, we can use the chat as well, but also you can take the floor at that moment. And so for the general discussion, you can raise your hand with the button of Zoom. If you need any support, don't hesitate to ask to Faye and Joël. They can help you with all the Zoom technique, etc. So I would like to give the floor to the FFEM Secretariat to start the official launching of the SARGADOM project.
Thank you very much, Renia. And welcome to all participants. My name is Janique Etienne. I am in charge of international water projects for the French Facility for Global Environment. I'm delighted to be with you today for the kickoff of meeting of our SARGADOM project. Indeed, after a few months of instruction, the FFEM steering committee has decided in 2020 to co-finance this program through a 3 million euros grant to three main partners, UBO, SSP, and MarViva Foundation. The good news is that the three financing agreements have now been signed, beginning with UBO and the MarViva Foundation, and ending today with SSP. So the project will therefore be able to start effectively, and we are very, very happy. For those who don't know us, a few words about FFEM. The FFEM promotes innovation that targets environmental protection and sustainable development in developing countries. As a French interministerial financial instrument, it operates within the framework of French official development assistance. It encourages innovative initiatives and pilot projects that respond to global environment challenges and aim for environmental, social, and economic benefits. Its objective is to test solutions and learn lessons from them, and then to facilitate their dissemination and deployment in other places or on another broader scale. Indeed, the French Facility for Global Environment has been involved for more than 25 years in supporting projects aimed at preserving marine and coastal ecosystems and also sustainable economic development of the territories. And since 2014, in supporting BBNJ. The management of activities and the protection of biodiversity in the high seas is complicated by lack of knowledge and an imperfect governance framework that doesn't allow for the implementation of ecosystemic approach that would favor the protection of marine environments and organisms and the conservation of goods and services provided by these ecosystems. So the international community has recognized the need to improve this framework by supporting the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea with a new legally binding international instrument, the BBNJ agreement. In this context, FFEM high seas projects will try to make significant contributions to the building of high seas governance and to the implementation of this new agreement, in particular by providing scientific knowledge on the ecosystems to be preserved. Since 2014, we have thus supported projects concerning particular and emblematic ecosystems with the acquisition of new scientific knowledge on the functioning of these particular ecosystems and communicating their importance and vulnerability, and taking into account that they are increasingly exposed to anthropogenic risks due to the availability of sophisticated techniques to reach and exploit them. Let me present two examples that could be source of inspiration. First, the project's conservation and sustainable use of seamounts in the Southwest Indian Ocean beyond areas of national jurisdiction. This region of the world was chosen because of existing information and data, the partners in the region, its exemplary governance with the Nairobi Regional Sea Convention and the SIOFA, Southern Indian Ocean Fisheries Agreement, as well as its importance in terms of biodiversity. The projects aim to improve the state of knowledge on deep sea marine ecosystems in the high seas, improve and strengthen governance framework in the context of fisheries and mineral exploration and exploitation, and propose concrete measures for the conservation and management of these deep sea marine ecosystems. We also had to communicate the results and draw the attention of policymakers. Initiated in 2016, another project, the project Oceanic Plankton, Climate and Development, for the benefit of the Tara Expedition Foundation, has enabled progress to be made in a recognition of the importance of preserving planktonic ecosystems, both for their role in the carbon pump and in fisheries management. The production of scientific knowledge has been in this project entrusted for 6 young researchers from Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Senegal, and Togo, who are now integrated and trained in analysis methodologies and new technologies on the planktonic ecosystem. Since the beginning of this project, their work has led to the publication of around 10 scientific articles on the biodiversity of plankton, which is largely unknown. The aim is to understand its vulnerabilities, its adaptation and acclimatization responses, and to predict the consequences for tomorrow's marine ecosystems in order to preserve their role. The project also included a science to policy component aimed at mobilizing the scientific data for the protection and management of these ecosystems. Last but not least, the Thermal Dome and Sargasso Sea are two sites representative of the diversity and importance of the ecosystem of the high seas. They are dynamic formations which move, shrink, and expand with current and winds. They are mainly located beyond national jurisdiction on the high seas, but may encroach permanently, regularly, or from time to time on EEZ that are under the sovereignty of states. The project will incorporate and contribute to the elements of the UN negotiations on BBNJ by informing on possible implementation models for regional or international global coordination, consistent with the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and its implementing agreements as a part of the strategy based on an ecosystem approach. The project mobilized a great number of partners, which I welcome again. Co-financing partners, as you know, the main co-financing comes from the Sargasso Sea project of the second JEF Common Ocean Programme. Scientific partners such as MGL, BIOS, Global Fishing Watch, and NASA, Viva Trust, all of them to sustain MarViva, UBO, and SSPE, and with the support of our colleagues from the OFB as expert advice and direct support to MarViva. We hope that the project will make a significant contribution to the building of high seas governance in both sides and to the implementation of the new agreement on the implementation of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, in particular by proposing elements on hybrid governance. It's innovative in many aspects, both in terms of the existing regional approaches at the level of the thermal dome and the Sargasso Sea, and the DPSIR analysis approach that will support the recommendation for the creation of ABMTs, but also in terms of capitalization on the use of the big data and the new monitoring and surveillance tools. This project will have a demonstrative and replicable character for other remarkable high seas sites. Note that we will be present at the USN Congress to support you in the promotion of the project, and in particular on the Océan Pavillon, the 6th of September. Without further delay, I leave the floor and I wish you a good kickoff meeting.
Thank you very much, Janique. We are really happy to contribute. Oh, sorry, there's a helicopter behind me. So we are really happy to contribute to the FFEM strategy, and we will be happy to meet and promote to meet in Marseille at IUCN World Conservation Congress and promote this partnership and the SARGADOM project and future realizations to come. Now I would like to give the floor to the General Director of the French Biodiversity Agency, Mr. Pierre Dubreuil, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fenia. I'm very pleased to be with you at this moment. Votre Excellence, chers collègues, dear colleagues, the ice seas cover half of the planet, and we know so little about its richness. Nevertheless, we know its importance. For example, as every second breath we take, it's thanks to the ocean. So we must protect the marine ecosystems. As IPBES and IPCC experts recommend, we must act now and strengthen governance in order to reduce and avoid the loss of biodiversity. In order to manage and use sustainably the marine resources, we must strengthen cooperation. OFB, as you said before, the French Biodiversity Agency makes a fair contribution within the framework of the missions entrusted by the law at the time of its creation in January 2020. I mean, environmental policy, knowledge, support of public policies, protected areas management, stakeholders engagement. Thus, OFB is bringing technical and scientific support to enhance cooperation and contribute to international negotiations as the BBNJ. So I am delighted to participate today in the official launching of the SARGADOM project, and we sincerely thank the FFEM and all the co-financers for their support. The partnership between the MarViva Foundation, the Sargasso Sea Secretariat, and the Brest University will enable to gather experience from 2 pilot sites in the ICs, which are very different and covering this way a broader scale of government pitfalls. Both sites are recognized by the international community and the Convention of Biological Diversity and Ecologically and Biologically Significant Areas, ABSEAs. And the UNESCO has identified them as sites with a potential outstanding universal value. The project's outcomes should allow, almost in real time, to define in the future treaty the best possible framework for the implementation of area-based management tools, including marine protected areas in the ice seas. So France and Costa Rica are leading the High Ambition Coalition, aiming at 30% of protected areas in 2030. And this should also concern the ICs. So I wish high ambition for the governance system of these 2 pilot sites in order to protect the unique marine biodiversity they are hosting. So I wish you a very good meeting. I'm very pleased to be with you. I apologize, but I will have to I won't be with you all the meeting. So, but it's a very good moment, and I'm very pleased to be with you just now to launch this meeting. So thank you very much for all of you, and see you, I hope so, in Marseille.
Thank you very much for these kind words. And of course, it's the very first meeting, the launch meeting. So we'll have at least 5 years to meet again, to see what is implemented. And of course, first of all, we start in Marseille. Thank you very much. Well, I think that we have some technical concern for the connection of the French ambassador. So I have to rearrange the agenda, and we will continue with the presentation of the 2 demonstration sites. And after each presentation for each site, in one hand the Sargasso Sea, and on the other hand the thermal dome, I will pick up 1 or 2 short questions. So during the presentation, don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat, and I will be happy to forward them to the speakers. So now I would like to give the floor to David Freestone from the Sargasso Sea Secretariat.
Thank you, Finia. Delighted to be here. So thank you very much to you and to Monsieur Dubreuil, and also to Janique. And I hope everybody understood the significance of her announcement that this morning the French FFEM actually signed the agreement with the FFEM SSPI, the Sargasso Sea Project Inc. agreement. So we're now, all three of us are all legally locked into the rest. That's fantastic news. So I have quite a big task. We've got 15 minutes in total. I'm going to speak for a few minutes, mostly on the organizational structure. Then my colleagues from the Commission, Howard Rowe, Professor Howard Rowe, and Dr. Tammy Warren will be speaking. And then I hope that Craig Powell from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Bahamas will also be able to join and say a few words as well. So without further ado, if everything works, I'll try and move forward with this. And why isn't that doing it? Right, nothing happening. Yeah.
I don't know if Faye, I don't know if she can help you with that.
Yeah, Faye, but I'll stop my screen and then perhaps you could.
Oh, you may have to click. You may have to click on your screen, David.
To move forward.
Yeah, on the PowerPoint to move forward. Is it a PDF or a PPT?
No, it's a PowerPoint, but I've got, oh, here it is. It's moved. Okay. So the Sargasso Sea, for those of you who are just coming to that, most of you will know enough have heard me talking about this. But we say it's a vital ecosystem. We just heard that it's an EPSA, an ecologically and biologically significant area. It's important for a large range of ecosystem services it provides, not at least for the climate system, but particularly for the biodiversity. And I'm sure Howard will say something more about that, but it also provides important commercial species as well as, and also the habitat of a number of endangered and threatened species as well. Our mandate as the Sargasso Sea Commission dates from 2014, when the Hamilton Declaration on Collaboration for the Conservation of the Sargasso Sea was signed. There's a picture of Sylvia Earle, who's now our ambassador, was chair of our former steering committee. And this is the area that we have designated that the parties, the signatories, the countries that have signed the declaration, which is a non-binding political commitment, the high seas area. So it excludes all the EZ of Bermuda, but Bermuda EZ is part of the Sargasso Sea as well. But we're concentrating on the high seas area. These were the current signatories. Now have 10 signatories: the Azores, the Bahamas, Bermuda, the BVI, Canada, the Cayman Islands, the Dominican Republic, Monaco, United Kingdom, United States, and a lot of others have been great supporters, including France, but Netherlands, Sweden, South Africa, and others have been great supporters, as well as a number of organizations. The role of the Commission is to exercise a stewardship role, Sargasso Sea, and to keep its productivity and resilience under continual review, and then to develop a work program and action plans for the conservation of the ecosystem, working within the context of the Law of the Sea Convention and those organizations that already have competence. So those are already going to be our key partners in this process. We have a fairly light structure, meeting the signatories, which because of COVID, paradoxically, has become now every 2 months. In the early days, it was only every year in person. So we actually now become to engage the signatories in a much more serious way, which has been a great boon, I think. We have the Sargasso Sea Commission, which is made up of independent experts who serve in their personal capacity, meets every 2 months, and the Sargasso Sea Secretariat. The full weight of the Secretariat you see before you is me and Faye, and we're based technically in the IUCN office in Washington, although I've been working at home for 2 years and Faye is based in Bermuda. So it's only that's our postal address. And they're the members of our commission. They serve in their personal capacity, and we're delighted to have at least 2 of them here today. I think I saw Stephen as well, so thank you. And again, not read these all out, but we can't do this alone. So we have a number of really important partners, some of whom are represented and will be speaking. But we have a lot of collaborating partners, more than 30. And we have MOUs and agreements with a large number of the organizations like NAFO, North Atlantic Fisheries Organization. We have observer status. We attend ICAT, the Commission on Atlantic Tunas, as well as the Seabed Authority and others. That's our last meeting in 2019, where we had a major workshop funded by the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans, where we actually looked at the ongoing strategy. And one of the outcomes of that really was the launch of this project, which is funded by the GF. And I mention this not in any way to denigrate the important contribution of FFEM, because I think that putting forward these two proposals by them in parallel has actually strengthened both of them. So the FFEM liked, I think, the fact that GF was actually involved, and the GF liked the fact that FFEM was really involved. So it's been a great synergy. It's called strengthening the stewardship of an economically and biologically significant high seas area, slightly different from the EBSA. So those are our partners there. It's GF project, which now seems to be moving forward. We have approval. UNDP are the implementing agency, and I thought I saw Julien as well. So IOC in Paris are the executing agency. But the important project for today is the FFEM project. This is sorry, let me just a bit more detail of the GF. So the GF is a 4-year project, and we designed it as 4 years so that it would actually be finishing at the same time as the FFEM project, which is 5 years. And again, the design of it is very similar, an ecosystem diagnostic analysis. So we're going to look at the whole ecosystem in the more detail than we were able to do in the past in 2010, 2011, when we started this project. We're going to look at a roadmap for how we would go further, and all the components of where we could put conservation measures in place. And then we end up with a strategic action program, which we would want the signatories and other governments and other partners to sign up to, which defines the way in which we go forward with this. And there are lots of ideas of the ways that this could form, as our colleague said, a model for what's happening with the BBNJ agreement. And of course, at the same time, knowledge management is very important, the communication of this as well as monitoring and evaluation. So this links in very well with our FFEM project, which is contributing to this hybrid governance. And by Ambassador from France would have said, I know that he explained what he meant by hybrid, that this is a system which is not regional, but includes a regional component as well as an overarching international framework. And that's really what's likely to be the outcome, well, the wish list outcome of the BBNJ discussions. So this is a 5-year project. My godfathers, I should have updated this one. It's a 5-year project. It's actually starting in the last quarter of 2021 because we've just actually signed the agreement. So that September next week. It's 3 million, as we heard, and of which we get nearly €1 million. So that's tremendous. And those are all the partners who have been helping, who've been mentioned there. Global Fishing Watch, World Maritime University, Imperial College who'll be speaking, BIOS, Edinburgh University, and Duke University Marine Geospatial Ecological Lab. So the components are very similar. I haven't got time to go into them in too much detail, but first of all, component one is about coordination, because of course the part of this is for us to learn from each other as we do this, particularly the two thermal dome and the Sargasso Sea sites themselves. So that's setting up the structure for this. But then we're also going to be doing this as in parallel to the ecosystem diagnostic for the GF. So that's defining the socio-ecosystem of the Sargasso Sea. And we're kick-starting this work in year one with 3 major studies produced by partners who will be talking later, the Bermuda Institute for Ocean Science, looking at oceanography, Duke University Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab, who will be looking at linking up the work they do with their marine migratory corridors project, as well as actually putting together the beginnings of a platform for us of artificial intelligence, remote sensing capacity in collaboration with Global Fishing Watch. And then also Imperial College, who are going to do some modeling for us in relation to fisheries and the environmental indicators for that. So this is what we're looking at. This is in the first, that's component 2. So it includes innovative components on big data, which is one of the issues that we've been working with, particularly with NASA as well, and on their coverage project, which is attempt a remote sensing project, which will incorporate other data, which is coming from other partners. And then important as the number 3 is the governance issue. So that's in its iteration in the GF the outcome is a strategic action program, but this is really the crux of the impact with the BBNJ process, because we want to build a hybrid and participatory governance model, which could be used as a model for other high seas areas as well, through this participatory and multi-sectoral discussions. Recommendations for potential governance structures and mechanisms which will be generated with the participation of public and private stakeholders. So that's based on the work with existing organizations such as the International Maritime Organization, Seabed Authority, ICAT, the Tuna Commission, and also with NAFO and others. And then capacity building, which we will have a role in, but which is also mostly going to be handled by UBO. So thank you very much. I hope we've left some time for questions. I think the suggestion was that we ask Howard to say a few words, our Commissioner Howard, Professor Howard Rowe, and then Tammy Trott, Commissioner Dr. Tammy Trott, and then if he's on, Craig Powell from the Bahamas. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here as well. Oh, here we go. Okay.
Center screen now.
Yeah, we go. I'm Howard Rowe. I used to be director of the Oceanography Centre at Southampton, UK, and I've been involved in the Sargasso Sea and with David for about the last 11 or 12 years. It seems rather like a lifetime. But following on from David, I'm going to briefly say something about the science of the Sargasso Sea, why it's important, tell you about some of the threats it faces and where we're going with it. And I'm sorry I don't have any pictures of animals and whatnot, but I do recommend the Sargasso Sea Commission's website, which has got lots and lots of lovely pictures of the animals we're talking about in it. So the Sargasso Sea's importance derives from a combination of oceanography, its ecology, its role in global research and monitoring, and its resources. You've seen the map on David's presentation. The Sargasso Sea lies within the subtropical North Atlantic gyre. Essentially, it's a huge pool of water moving slowly and surrounded by clockwise rotating currents that trap both the water and material within the gyre. The area we chose to focus on is in fact the western basin of the Sargasso Sea to the west of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. That was that funny shaped blob to the left of the Sargasso Sea that David showed you on the map. Within the gyre, there are mats of holopelagic sargassum weed that spends all its life going round and round in the gyre. It reproduces by fragmentation, and it's adapted to living in an oligotrophic environment. This is the so-called golden floating rainforest of the Atlantic Ocean. There are 2 species of sargassum, each of which has a number of forms, and indeed some of these forms are very, very close indeed to being called different species. But the mats host specialized communities of animals because they're taking advantage of a rare substrate within the open ocean. There are 11 endemic species associated with the sargassum mats. There are more than 140 invertebrate species living there and about 80 fish species, all living within these mats. The mats act as nursery areas for many fish, especially flying fish that build their bubble nests within the weed. Flying fish are a favorite food for many of the large commercial fish species which live or migrate through the Sargasso Sea. They're also the home of baby turtles during their so-called lost years, and very recently some satellite tracking data has demonstrated that baby green turtles do indeed go to the Sargasso Sea for their lost years, where they sit on the mats and derive an energetic advantage because the very surface seawater that they're sitting in gets a bit warmer than the surroundings, so they grow quicker. And they're also the home of, where have we got to? They're the home of baby turtles, larger fish and seabirds. There are 26 species of seabirds associated with these mats, 2 of which actually roost on them. But larger fish and seabirds feed on or below the mats. It's a crossroads for the Atlantic for many migratory species. So we have, for instance, humpback whales coming from the south, going through the Sargasso Sea, going to their feeding grounds in the subarctic and Arctic, and back again. Poor beagle sharks go from Canada to give birth in the Sargasso Sea. Leatherback turtles move through the Sargasso Sea, and so on and so forth. It's the only known spawning area for both the European and American eels, though no one has actually ever seen an adult anguillid eel there. Many of the species in the Sargasso Sea are of global conservation interest. Our initial science case included 35 species on the IUCN Red List, plus several categories of deep sea corals in the spore protocol. Other species have been added to the Red List since. So, it hosts diverse communities of animals, but the area is also fundamentally important for its role in global scale processes. For example, the high levels of productivity due to the microbial loop, and for global research and understanding of the ways in which the ocean is responding to climate change. Much of this research is based at the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences, which hosts the BAT site, the world's longest time series of deep ocean measurements. Nick Bates is going to talk about some of this work later, and I'll just add that continuation of this time series is hugely important. The Sargasso Sea is also an important resource. David showed you some of the estimated values, but there are other unquantified indirect values, such as the Sargasso Sea's role in climate regulation, in nutrient recycling, in conservation of genetic diversity, etc., and so on. And it's threatened. It's threatened by climate change, which, for example, is moving ocean fronts, which may be the homing clues for eels, and reducing primary productivity in a warming ocean. It's threatened by fishing, especially overfishing. The automatic identification system on ships shows increased fishing activity recently and increased transit of shipping, and by pollution, especially plastic pollution, with microplastics accumulating in the gyre. We have achieved international recognition for the importance of the Sargasso Sea via our science case, via EBSA designations, including the New England Seamount Chain and Corner Sea Rise Seamounts, which are in part of our area, and via chapters in both the recent United Nations World Ocean Assessment. But, and there's always a but, the recent socio-economic and environmental damage caused by massive blooms of sargassum appearing on the beaches of West Africa, South America, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico since 2011 might suggest to some that the Sargasso Sea is a questionable area for conservation. However, these blooms do not come from the Sargasso Sea. They are centered in the North Equatorial Recirculation region, a gyre system to the south of the Sargasso Sea, and they are fueled largely perhaps by nutrient runoff from the Amazon, Orinoco, and Congo rivers. I sincerely hope mitigation measures will one day reduce this runoff. But despite this, the oligotrophic system within the North Atlantic subtropical gyre remains intact, and it continues to meet the EBSA criteria. Within this program and the associated GF program, we aim to carry out a review of the ecosystem, identify gaps, develop monitoring and management strategies for both the Sargasso Sea and the thermal dome. We will develop a DPSIR, driving pressures, state of the ocean's impact resource system for these areas. And Laurie Kell is going to talk about these later. Finally, it's my hope that together we will be able to move the BBNJ agenda forward. These two areas are excellent test cases for meaningful conservation measures in the high seas. Such measures are long overdue, and I hope that together we will contribute to getting action rather than more words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This really helps us to have a greater, broader view of what is unique in the Sargasso Sea.
I beg your pardon?
I would like to thank you for this great presentation, which enable us to have a broader view of what is unique for the Sargasso Sea. We'll still have 5 minutes for presentations on the Sargasso Sea. David, I think you would like to invite some other speakers, and maybe then we could take one question and continue with the other side.
Surely, I see that Ambassador Ségura has joined us, so welcome. That's very nice to see that. So I was going to invite Commissioner Dr. Tammy Warren from Bermuda to say a few words, and then I hope, Faye tells me that Craig Powell from the Bahamas is also available. So if just a couple of minutes each would be great, and then we can have perhaps a question. Thank you. So Tammy.
Sure. I'm going to be very short. So Howard's told you quite a bit about the biological and ecological significance of the Sargasso Sea and the threats to the Sargasso Sea. And I wanted to just point out that this not only applies to the high seas, but it also applies to the exclusive economic zone around Bermuda. So the island is the only community within the Sargasso Sea, and thus has a very strong connection with this unique ecosystem. And Bermuda's exclusive economic zone is contiguous with the animals, the plants, and the processes that occur across the wider Sargasso Sea region. And so Bermuda has been honored to lead the Sargasso Sea Commission since its inception, and is pleased to see the realization of this project to contribute to the protection of biodiversity and ecosystem services in the high seas. And this will undoubtedly have a positive impact on Bermuda and its exclusive economic zone as well. Because the health of the Sargasso Sea remains a significant concern to Bermuda because of clear impacts of climate change and other human influences. So rising sea level and intense hurricane activity will challenge Bermuda's coastline and some infrastructure, and changes in the pelagic ecosystem and fish stock declines in the Sargasso Sea and surrounding Atlantic Ocean generate concerns for us around food security and others as well. But as Howard said, Bermuda's in a unique position really to experience and observe these changing ocean and contribute to the effective decision-making regarding the improvement of the Sargasso Sea's health. And as he said, Nick Bates will be talking a little later about biases input, and they're one of the scientific partners for this project. They have some of the longest running oceanographic research time series in the world and have compelling evidence for change in seawater temperatures and salinity in addition to other changes. And these data will feed into the program outputs, the socio-ecological analysis diagnosis, and will support the development of the strategic action program for the Sargasso Sea. So Bermuda is looking forward to continuing to collaborate in international cooperation to protect the Sargasso Sea through Sargasso Sea Commission and this FFEM project. And we're looking forward to strengthening governance for this area to benefit all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tammy. That's great. And thank you again for highlighting the fact, which I remiss of me not to mention myself, was that Bermuda is the leader of this project. Right, for the first kickoff meeting was in 2009. Prime Minister, the Premier then was very supportive. We have a few more governments changes since then, but the new Premier is also certainly the Deputy Premier is the minister that's responsible, as it were, for the portfolio, which includes our work. So we're delighted to have the support of the Bermuda government. So that's tremendous. The Bermuda government actually appoints the commissioners. So that's one of the powers that was granted by allocated by the Hamilton Declaration. So thank you very much, Tammy. And then we also are pleased to have Craig Powell, I see on. So Craig is a legal officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Bahamas. He's been a major player in this project. He's right in at the beginning. He's spoken up on our behalf at the United Nations and General Assembly, put forward the resolutions to include us in the resolution on ocean affairs and law of the sea, the annual one, which is there. He also was really instrumental in persuading the Bahamas government to sign, which they did in the end of 2016, wasn't it? After so that was we were absolutely delighted to have Bahamas as a player. Bermuda's right in the middle of the Sargasso Sea, but Bahamas is right on the edge. So it's tremendous to have you, Craig. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. I thought that's my cue. Okay. Good afternoon or good morning to all of you, and thank you. And yes, the Bahamas remains very excited to be a part of this initiative. And thank you very much for the organizers and for those who have had the intuition to put it forward into now on what David has just explained this morning with the signing, the significance that has become a reality. Now comes the real work, so to say. So here we are. As a small Caribbean country, the Bahamas' coastline faces off with the Sargasso Sea in an enormous way. So it is inevitable that what happens in the Sargasso Sea happens in the Bahamas. And the link that really draws is, for instance, the sea turtles who hatch on the beaches of the Bahamas. They spend their life in the Sargasso Sea or commuting between the two. So we have this direct link through another species of a kind. There are others, of course, but that's a notable one. Internationally, the Bahamas signed the agreement to be a part of the treaty, part of the political agreement, but we're excited to hear that it's moving forward to a stronger footing in the international arena with perhaps some sort of a treaty understanding, so a treaty regime, which will give it more substance and make it more, make it more permanent, which is the great idea of this project that's going forward now. As David quite aptly pointed out, and so the time of some degree, the Bahamas has been a part of it from the conception. I remember back in 2014 when we first met to negotiate the terms of the declaration, which was very interesting. I'm sure we had a vision of what was coming forward, but we're all delighted now that we're at this point where it's actually taking fruition and coming about. Of course, David has already mentioned that we were active in making a small delegation to bring it forward to the consultation, the United Nations consultation on the General Assembly Sustainable Fisheries Resolution on Ocean Affairs and the Law of the Sea. That was exciting as well because that gave the Sargasso Sea Commission the declaration an international face, which it already had, but again, within that resolution. I remember in 1914, I had the pleasure and the opportunity to represent the Bahamas at the Hamilton Declaration in Bermuda, which did eventually lead to the Minister of Foreign Affairs at that time, the Honorable Fred Smith, along with Bermuda Minister of Environment, signing the declaration at the Bahamas House in New York. And again, that was a very, very memorable occasion. I think our Director General, who's now the Director General here, at that point, she was a part of the FAO, but now she's our Director General, was also there to witness that. So it's good to see that the continues to go on. By 2017, I was given the opportunity again to represent the Bahamas at the Bahamas at the workshop for the Sargasso Sea Commission, and there we got a nice idea. I'm glad it was successful. We brought the commission to the Bahamas, and they were hosted at the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, where we had a very very productive and in-depth meeting that I think laid the foundation for what we're doing today and bringing the idea for the GAF program. Saying in all, the Bahamas is glad to be a part of this, and we look forward to whatever developments can happen. One of the things we did move with, then again, the Secretariat and Mr. Freestone really led the charge in there, that the Commission signed an agreement with the University of the Bahamas to further educate and further develop the apparatus within the Bahamas. I'm personally looking forward to one day we having several oceanographers who could be a part of the studies and a part of the benefit from the information that FFEM is gathering now, or be a part of gathering it for future generations. So in that light, thank you very much for this opportunity. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Henfield, appreciates the opportunity that you afforded to me and to the Bahamas to being a part of this. And we look forward for great things to come in the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Fini, over to you.
I thank you very much for these highlights on the progresses that have been made with the Sargasso Sea Commission. I think that, as it has been said, that there will be very interesting elements regarding the strong connections of the marine ecosystems. This will be a great input for the BBNJ process to take it in consideration, and also to handle with areas that include EEZ and high seas areas. So I think we'll have some fruitful works from the Sargasso Sea Commission. As David advised me, we have online the French ambassador in charge of the ocean. So I would like to welcome him, and we are happy that this has been arranged and he's with us. I'm suggesting to continue with the presentation of the two sites, with the second site of the thermal dome. And thus, this will make sense to have a speech from the ambassador on the inputs that we can expect from the project, the SARGADOM project, and from what will be developed in both sites. So before giving the floor to Jorge Jiménez from the MarViva Foundation, I would like to ask you if you have a question for the Sargasso Sea, and if yes, please raise your hands now, and I can take one or two questions to one of the speakers that have been making some presentations. So let you a couple of minutes, maybe. And anyway, we will also have enough time for discussion at the very end of the meeting. So we can also at that moment come back to the presentation of the sites and raise some questions. So I don't see any questions. So now I'm happy to give the floor to Jorge Jiménez from the MarViva Foundation and for the presentation of the thermal dome.
Thank you, Fania. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. I'm going to start sharing my screen. I would like to thank first everybody that has been making possible for all of us to be here, and let me know if you see my screen now.
Not yet.
Not yet. Ooh. Well, I have problems sharing it. I don't know why.
I think now it's coming. It seems like.
Okay, thank you.
It's okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks a lot. Well, as many of you know, the Costa Rica thermal dome is an upwelling system in front of the Central American coast. As you can see in the video, it's a system that moves, expands, and contracts throughout the year and through the years. And it's dependent not on phytoplankton, the normal phytoplankton, but on blue-green algae. It has a primary productivity that is quite high. It's about six times the productivity of the surrounding area. So it is the base of a complex food web that feeds most of the Eastern tropical Pacific, especially the Pacific coast of Central America. And as I mentioned, it moves along the coast and expands and contracts throughout the months of the year. So you can see here a brief diagram of how it expands through the years depending on winds and currents. It is, however, a predictable phenomenon. So we will know more or less where and when it's going to be in a given time and place. But it is also a very significant area in size, close to reaching almost 2 million square kilometers on the Pacific coast. There is a lot of biological connectivity associated to this area because of all the migrations of a species that comes to feed upon the phytoplankton or upon the animals that are feeding there. So, so you have regional connectivities, like at the left side of the diagram, you will see the migrations of the blue whale coming from Oregon and California, making journeys of thousands of kilometers to feed and reproduce in the Costa Rica thermal dome. We know, even though it's still scarce, that there is a lot of interaction between the shark populations and the coast of the Central American region and the high seas associated with the Costa Rica thermal dome. There is also a very strong association, as you can see in the right side of the diagram, of sport fishing populations, and that sustains a multi-million-dollar industry there. There is also a very interesting phenomenon of daily migrations between the deep waters of around 500 meters deep and the surface waters during the night, of a large population of mesopelagic fish that feeds upon the phytoplankton that concentrates on the surface waters of the dome. So there is a lot of connectivity associated with that region. This region is certainly a cetacean hotspot. All the 10 species of cetaceans in the Eastern Tropical Pacific are concentrated in this area. As you can see, you have several species of dolphins clearly concentrated around the dome area, and also the blue whales also concentrated there, as we mentioned. So this is an important cetacean region. Also a very important fish location. You can see in this diagram by the Global Fishing Watch of the concentration of the fishing fleets around the edges of the dome. Of course, the oxygen poor waters in the center are not as good for fish, but certainly the front areas of the dome, where there is a lot of productivity and oxygen, that is where you will find most of the concentration of fishing effort, including long lining and porcine fleets from different parts of the world. The tuna captures, for example, there are in the hundreds of metric tons per square kilometer, per degree, per square degree, and this is very important for economics of the region, especially countries not from the region itself, but from abroad, especially Ecuador, Spain, Mexico, the United States, even Venezuela comes to fish in these regions of the Pacific waters. This is a site that has been enjoying international recognition in the last years, and it has been part of this has been declared an EPSA site. You can see it on the left side of the diagram. You can see what is called the EPSA of Papagayo, associated with a section of the dome, and it's a section because at that stage we didn't understand very much what was the dimensions and extension of the phenomenon. Has also been declared a hot spot by the Mission Blue, and also is in the list of potential World Heritage Sites in the high seas by UNESCO. There is an important opportunity here provided by the geographical proximity of this upwelling area to the Central American countries. This opportunity comes by the fact that adjacent countries will have certainly more influence on management decisions related to this site. So this is something that we are pursuing, trying to to involve Central American countries in managerial decisions about this site, even though most of it is in the high seas, as you can see in the diagram. There is already significant evidence of linkages of economical relevance between the high seas dome area and the coast of the Central American countries, including the cetaceans that are very important for the whale washing industry, that is a multi-million-dollar industry along the coast. The sport fishing, that also is very important in countries like Panama, Costa Rica, and Guatemala, and it supports a large population of sharks and certainly of turtles also. That also are the basis of touristic important activity along the coast of Central America. This area has been enjoying previous works, mostly led by us, by the MarViva Foundation since 2012, and thanks to the support of organizations like Gobi and the German government, we have been able to actually start convincing people of the relevance of this. This is a very important task, and at the beginning a very difficult one, because a lot of people didn't understand the relevance of the phenomenon. So we have been involved in a lot of political meetings with ministers, Congress people of all countries. We have developed communication campaigns to raise awareness on the general public about the relevance of this area. We have been able to get the designation of the site as an EPSA site and develop a lot of technical publications trying to summarize the existing knowledge of the site. So there is a previous work upon which hopefully this project is going to further advance. As a result of this previous work, we have already support from Central American countries and the organization that is called the Central American Council for Environment and Development, that basically is represented by the ministers of environment of the Central American countries and the Dominican Republic, are already approved a working plan for this area and has included the dome into the regional marine strategic plan. So this is an important achievement for us. The present project is a two sites project, which is very important to highlight. I think that one of the advantages of the project is that it will provide the opportunity to exchange experiences, lessons learned, and information between the two sites, and that is something that we are really excited about. As objectives, the project for the Costa Rica dome sector are part of the general projects the general objectives of the project, which are to contribute to the biodiversity and ecosystem services protection in the high seas, and also take advantage of the process that is going on in the UN in terms of the BBNJ negotiations that probably will not only provide important information, models, and lessons learned to the different countries and to the process itself within the UN. The specific components for the thermal dome are summarized as follows. We have first a component that is concentrated on the analysis, diagnosis of the ecological, sociological, ecosystem characteristics of the site. And especially we are very interested in establishing and strengthening the knowledge about the relationship between the high seas and the coast. That is very important for the Central American governments, and probably a high motivation for them to get involved in the management of this area. We have also the objective of generating an area-based management model for this area based on all the ecological and sociological information that is going to be generated so that we can establish ABM models that also will provide experiences and lessons learned to other sites around the world. One of the big objectives of the project itself is to analyze the governance needs and gaps that are needed to promote the governance of this area, and we are certainly looking at governance of the area, involving not only the regional organizations but also the world level organizations. So this is why we call the hybrid model. One important component of the project is also to do and ensure that we have comparative analysis between the two sites, so that we, as I said, exchange information and knowledge based on the project experiences in the two sites. Let me go a little bit in detail in some of these objectives. In terms of the diagnosis and analysis component, we want to concentrate, of course, in oceanography and marine ecology, but also on socioeconomical data. We think that one of the important and relevant argument for the protection of these areas is the socioeconomical value of them and the relevance that they have in the economical and sociological context of the Central American coast. We will therefore concentrate on shedding light on what are the linkages between the high seas ecosystems and the coastal dynamics in the Central American region. And for that, we have not only a process of reviewing and synthesizing existing information, but also the possibility to basically promote and involve research organizations in the region to support the development of further data. And for that, for us, it's going to be very important the involvement of the Laboratory of Geospatial Ecology of the Duke University, which is going to be one of the partners in this endeavor. Hopefully with that, we're going to improve the scientific knowledge of the area, and also we're going to have a mechanism to share and update scientific information for this area, and partners from UBO are going to be talking a little bit more about that later on.
Excuse me, Jorge?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm afraid that we have to keep more details on what is expected and what is foreseen to be implemented. Maybe for the end of the meeting, if there are further questions for that, because we will be running after time and we need to respect the agenda and the timeline for everyone. So I'm sorry. I can give you maybe 1 more minute if you want to make a conclusion. And if there are additional questions and we need to go deeper, we will do that at the end of the meeting, please.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to have an emphasis on management of fisheries and navigation and biodiversity conservation in this area. And as I said, we're going to promote the governance, a governance model in the Dome region with the development of a hybrid structure involving different organizations, not only regional, but world level organizations. We are going to have for this endeavor a contribution of $1.4 million from FFEM, and the partners are going to have a cost share of 1.4 million euros for a total of $2.8 million for the whole project component. And that's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Jorge. I know it's an amazing place in the planet, and there are a lot of things to say about it. So the same thing, if there are one or two questions, we can, you can raise your hand now or keep them for later and at the end of the meeting. So are there any questions? I don't see raising hands. So I would like now to give the floor to His Excellency Serge Ségura, the French ambassador in charge of the ocean and the head of the French delegation to the BBNJ negotiations. And please share with us your thoughts on why are these demonstration sites interesting for the BBNJ process.
Thank you, Fenia, and I hope everyone hear me correctly. And I'm very sorry not to have been with you since the beginning, but I have had tremendous problems of connection with security in my ministry. That's why I'm so late. First of all, I would like to remind to everyone, because I suppose that many of you are very much aware about what is BBNJ negotiation, but some of you are perhaps not as much as the others, and it's important to remind a little bit what it is in order to see the link with the two projects we are discussing today. First of all, we always speak about BBNJ, but we sometimes forget to remind that it's a treaty. We are negotiating a treaty. That's a binding agreement for the lawyers. And it's an implementing agreement from the Convention on Law of the Sea. And that's very important because that means that all the principles which have been written in the Convention of Montego Bay will have to be respected by the new treaty. That is sometimes a challenge. Why this new treaty? Because for two main reasons. The progress of science and the progress of knowledge. We have now a much better view about what are ICs and what is the situation of biodiversity in ICs. And we see all the challenges that we face to save something of this biodiversity in ICs today. And the second reason also why we are negotiating is that we face an incredible development of innovation, technical progress, which allows companies, men in general, to work where they want in the sea, as far from the coast as it is possible, as deep in the sea as it is possible. So the international community had to react to this situation and to try to find a good system for conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, roughly speaking in ICs. And that's important to remind conservation on one side and sustainable use. We have, through this treaty, we have to find a balance between these two aspects. And that's important to remind it. That's the reason why I would like also to remind that it's not only a treaty on MPA in ICs, it's a treaty on capacity building. That's important, very important, because we have to say today that the capacity building part of Montego Bay has not been respected. So the new treaty has to organize the system, which will be more efficient. Secondly, it's a treaty about marine genetic resources, and that's important for developing countries. They wanted to have this chapter in the treaty, and that's a key point of the negotiation. It's a treaty about environment impact assessment for economic activities in ICs, and that's important for protection. And it's a treaty about tools for protection, in particular MPA. But the lawyers, international lawyers, know that there is no definition on MPA in the international law. We don't know what is an MPA in international law. And that's very funny to see that we don't have a definition of what is an MPA, but we are writing and writing articles about MPAs in ICs. Let's hope that at the end we will succeed. BBNJ treaty negotiation has suffered and is still suffering COVID crisis because the last negotiation meeting was in New York in 2019. And we have been postponing the fourth session of negotiation for 3 years now. We hope to have it in 2022, in March 2022. This is the last information I've got from the United Nations, but who knows now. What has to be said is that although we cannot negotiate in a traditional way, we still go on discussing through video conference meetings and with the help of some NGOs, which are very much efficient to help delegations, willing delegations, and not all delegations are participating to these informal meetings, unfortunately. But we hope that what is discussed will permit the next fourth meeting in 2022 to reach success. I think that we will need a fifth meeting to finish it, but let's see what will happen. So what is the interest when we focus on the part on MPA in ICs? You know that MPAs in ICs, for some lawyers, and I know French lawyers who still believe that it's not possible to create MPA in ICs, which is wrong because we have already example. The problem is that if you create an MPA in ICs, you will oblige your flag to respect it, your nationals to respect it, and that's all. So the necessity has appeared very clearly to create some international organization in order to oblige members of these international organizations to follow their own decisions to create MPA. One example is OSPAR and some others, but it's not sufficient because when we speak about some fishing activities, we know, I've heard, for example, in the presentation that, for example, one European nation was fishing tuna in the Pacific near Costa Rica, Spain, let's say European Union, because it's a common policy. And well, if you want to oblige European Union to follow some rules in an MPA, you have to have the European Union part of the creation of this MPA through an international organization, or at least an international process. This is the objective of the BBNJ negotiation on MPA, which is quite a sort of revolution if we succeed, because we have many NGOs coming with some ideas about creation of some MPA in some part of the ocean. And the two examples we have today, Sargasso Sea and the Costa Rican dome, are very, very interesting for us on the French side. First of all, because we do participate to the scientific thoughts and discussions on these two possible MPAs. And then because we think that these two projects will help the negotiators of the BBNJ during the negotiation of the treaty. But after the negotiation of the treaty, a big job of negotiations will follow, which will be to create the processes, to create the criteria of creation of MPA, because we don't want to have a very loaded treaty. More loaded the treaty is, more difficult it is to negotiate, and less success we will have. So what we want is to leave to the COP afterwards, because we will not create an international organization, it would be a COP, to leave to the COP the possibility to create lists of criteria, for example, to create MPA, to the scientific body of the COP to think about some processes in order to be sure that when you have a proposal of creating an MPA in a certain place, this is a good proposal because you have a real scientific advice, international advice to create an MPA in that place. This is the thing we are discussing today: criteria, processes, the role of the scientific advice, what kind of management plan will the states be able to create to manage these marine protected areas, and do we need a committee of implementation? On the French side, we do think we will need one. Some states are against it, but we hope to convince them. And we are also thinking about a system of recognition by the COP of the BBNJ of what has already been done by others in some other organization. And for example, these two future MPA could be recognized by the future COP of the BBNJ treaty. That will be very important, this system of recognition, because we will earn time, and it will be approved that the international community was already working to protection, that we didn't wait for the BBNJ. What is interesting also in these two systems is that there is a kind of regionalism in the two systems. And this is a big discussion inside the BBNJ negotiation, the balance between internationalization and regionalism. You know, everyone is very ambitious, but when you begin to say to someone, let's say, North Atlantic, we are interested as French. When you begin to think that someone from China will have an opinion about what is to be done in North Atlantic, sometimes we do prefer a regional system. I think that the good balance would be between the regional system and the international system. And the BBNJ treaty is trying to mix things. And the two examples we have today seem to be, for me at least personally, good examples of this good balance, because we see that there is an acceptance by the coastal states of the region, and this is absolutely necessary. You cannot build even something in ICs without the acceptance of regional coastal states. But on the other side, you have also a great interest shown by France, for example, shown by Germany also. That's the two examples for these two projects. But that shows that you need also an international view outside the region, because these outside of the region will have to accept what is done in the region in order to respect it afterwards. So that's also a very important thing. And only to finish and not take too much time, but we will have perhaps a discussion afterwards before the end of the meeting. I would say that you know that France is very much interested by the work made by UNESCO, not only because it is in Paris, but also because it is a scientific organization and a cultural organization. So for us, the work made by UNESCO is very important, and what is done, all the discussion about integrating IC's parts as, let's say, sort of recognition by international community of the importance of parts of the ICs is for us very important, and we know that UNESCO has been working and is still working, I suppose, on Sargasso Seas and the Costa Rican dome. So there is a link in all this, and I think that the work that you are doing is coming at a good time, at a good moment. We will use it in the BBNJ, not everyone, we are not naive, of course. Not everyone will use it, but at least what you are doing and what you will demonstrate will show us that there is a way to do things. There is a way to organize them through a treaty, which is something very important, of course, because it's international law. And then afterwards, not to lose too much time when the COP will begin to work, because the projects are already ready to be studied by the COP and recognized. I stop here.
Sincerely, thank you for the highlights on the what could be the BBNJ mechanism, and for sure I already have a question that would be, when could we imagine, or when could we expect that we have a first MPA in the high seas? There are already some existing MPAs in the high seas, but in the framework of a future BBNJ treaty, this is not, you are not obliged to answer to this. And also, yes, to recognize that the works in the framework of the World Heritage Center of the UNESCO have been very relevant for the design of this project. They are not in, it's not their role to be contributing to the future governance in both sides, but I think that the team remains very, very interested in the progress that we can make with this issue, and we really have to thank the UNESCO for these works, because they have been very, very relevant for the project. As I might have understood, you won't be able to stay until the end, so maybe it's yes, please.
I think I will be able to stay until 8. But not more than 8.
I think that 8 will be enough for everybody. So I would like already to take maybe 1 or 2 questions if you really want to ask your questions now. So please raise your hands. And of course, we will be able to come back again at the end of the meeting. But if the participants, the attendees want to raise the hand and ask a question now, it's possible. So there is no questions in the chat, but if you want to do it now, it's okay. Well, otherwise oh yes, David Freestone, please go on.
Yes, Ambassador Ségura, thank you very much for a tremendous presentation, putting us on the right track and to show us how important the work we're doing is in the wider context. I liked your characterization of the importance of the hybrid model, which we're working on. Do you think that we'll be, I mean, I can't ask you when you think the treaty will be concluded, because we're just looking into a crystal ball, but how would you see the importance of what we're already doing within the current system? You know, if we're thinking in terms of the next session being early next year, do you think that what we're doing would still be of use to the? We've been as a Sargasso Sea, we've had a couple of presentations to the BBNJ process, and we've had a lot of interest. Do you think, how would you see we would be particularly able to mobilize information which will be useful to the BBNJ process?
I think that lobbying is a very important thing. It's not a French word, but I accept it as a deficient word. And in the different lobbies of UN, it's very important to have people like you with whom we can discuss and you can discuss with different delegations. And it's important because there are many delegations who are very much in favor of BBNJ treaty, but they are frightened by the result. And sometimes they are frightened by the words used by certain NGOs. Let's speak frankly. And if they see that there are some concrete results coming from international organizations, from groups of states far from their own region, at that moment, they begin to be more comfortable with some ideas of creating MPA in ICs, not so frightened, because I've seen some delegates from Asiatic countries, for example, telling me, how can you imagine MPA in ICs preventing navigation, for example? And so they need to realize that by discussing with scientists, by discussing with coastal states, by discussing with companies, there are certainly means to reduce the impact of navigation on certain species, for example, in some place, without prohibiting completely navigation. You know, and that's something that is very interesting for me in particular with the Costa Rican Dome project, is that I've seen that if we do create something through the COP of the BBNJ on this region, we will have to create an MPA which will be, I would say, bigger at some month of the year and smaller on other months of the year. And this is quite an innovation, because for the moment, everyone was thinking that an MPA is created, it's sort of with some borders and we don't touch it before 20 years. Now we will see that if we want to apply a real scientific thought to this creation, we will be obliged to perhaps to imagine systems of MPA whose size will vary according to the year, or MPA will navigate according to the evolution of some cetacean, for example. You know, we have to be clever that we have been before, and people as you can help us to be clever. So that's the way I see you can go on your work.
Thank you. Could I, if I may come back to you, if there's another question, that's tremendous. It's interesting that when we started 10 years ago, we are immediately challenged on the use of the word MPA. We went through our whole website to make sure that the word MPA didn't appear on the website, because they took it, it was taken to be a refuge, a complete no fish area, as non-negotiable no fishing area. So we've taken a much more pragmatic approach than that. So we are interested in protecting the Sargasso Sea, but we would use, if you like, I thought you're absolutely right, there is no international law definition of MPA. We tend to use the IUCN definition, which is a multi-use, or an area which has been has a management system which governs more than one area of activity, if you like, so fisheries and navigation, etc. So we've tried to be more pragmatic. So I hope that our work in that respect is going to be useful as well. So thanks very much for your help with this.
Thank you very much. Maybe another question, if you want to raise your hand. No? So we can continue now with the presentation of the SARGADOM project and the global action plan. So I will let the moderation to Joël Richard and start by giving the floor to Denis Bailly by the Brest University for the global presentation of the SARGADOM action plan.
Thank you very much, Fenia. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much to all for your participation. I will share my screen for a short presentation to give you a view of the structure of the project. Can you see it?
Yeah, it looks
Yes.
good.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So sorry. So I hope, but well, I'm almost sure that my colleagues David and Jorge, and also Ambassador Ségura, have convinced you about the interest of choosing the two cases, the thermal dome in the eastern tropical Pacific and the Sargasso Sea, as two unique initiatives to serve as pilot cases to advance conservation in the high seas, and also to test and reflect on the concept of hybrid governance, so as it has been defined as any kind of modes of governance that combines a regional approach and a global approach, a global engagement. I am an environmental economist at the University of Brest, part of a laboratory on law and economics of the sea. And my main field of expertise is on designing participatory integrated assessment methodologies to engage science to policy with stakeholders. And that's the reason why I'm in this and why my team is in this project. And with SARGADOM, we want to, of course, to contribute to improve the protection of biodiversity and maintain ecosystem services in sensitive pelagic marine areas in the high seas. We want to facilitate the design of hybrid ocean governance models because we think it's the only road, as explained by Ambassador Ségura, to make BBNJ not only a goodwill declaration, but a real efficient tools to govern and protect high seas. So we want to contribute to the UN negotiation as it is more and more delayed. So we're still in time to maybe, I hope, contribute to the negotiation directly. But more than that, we really want to be ready, contribute to the implementation phase of the treaty, because we share Ambassador Ségura optimism about the fact that there will be a positive outcome to this negotiation. But there is a major challenge is to make it a real efficient tool. So I will just come back to just introduce the structure of the project and focus on what UBO, the University of Brest, will contribute in the project as other colleagues will give other focus on their contributions. So the project is divided in 4 components. It's a 5-year project. The component 1 is about the governance of the project. So we are 3 project beneficiaries of the funding from FFEM, and the French Biodiversity Agency is another supporting main project partner supporting the implementation of the project. Beyond these 4 partners, direct partners, we are working with 5 institutions. You see here, international, well-known, well-renowned scientific or political bodies that will be in the implementation of the project. We are going to coordinate the project through a coordination team. So FFEM, well, Janique Etienne has introduced FFEM, but FFEM is a French fund which is managed by, with the support of the 2 ministries, under the responsibility of two ministries who will be involved in supervising the implementation of the project. We have close link with the GEF, the Global Fund facility, sorry, because this project will be connected, articulated with one GEF project that is supporting the work of the Sargasso Sea, but also we're looking for connection with another GEF project in the area of capacity building with the global, the Gulf. And then we will have an advisory board. We don't want to work in a closed circle. We want to inputs from experts from outside the project. So you have a list here of individuals that we have solicited for their personal expertise to reflect with us on the implementation of the project, and most of them at this stage have accepted. The component 2 is this idea to develop, to test and develop a framework to integrate knowledge on all aspects of the problem, not only biophysical aspects, but also social and economic dimension that links diagnosis of the state of the problem, the issues, pressures, impacts, and the type of response that can be designed to improve and reach some management objectives. So this, the technical term that is DPSIR for driver, pressure, state, impact, and response. And my colleague, Kell will come back on this. So this component, we will develop a framework, implement it, tailored, made to the need of each of the sites, that will reveal needs, big holes, missing data for this integrated assessment. We will work on the issue of big data with technologies for gathering more data and processing big data, and we will work on this integration and get lessons learned. And UBO will be in charge of coordinating the design of the methodology, and the partners in each site will be in charge of implementing the methodology. And UBO will come back to take the lessons learned across the two sites and you'll see later, disseminate the results. The component 3, the other big dimension of the project is advancing. This is not really research. This is not theoretical. It's for each of the pilot sites, the 2 pilot sites, to advance, reinforce the governance of their initiatives by conducting negotiations with fishing regional organization, with IMO for maritime traffic, and any other context. And we will be there at the end to summarize the lesson learned from the 2 experiences and broaden the scope to promote the idea and see ways to advance hybrid governance. The last component, we want that all what we will be doing, or what we will learn from the work, be widely disseminated. So this component is also under the responsibility of the University of Brest, and Jorge, who is here, will be in charge of coordinating this work. So this is capacity building by assembling resources and providing training format, online, physical training format, running training online and in presence. Not only with all the parties involved in the 2 pilot sites of the project, but far beyond that, to make the project known and the lesson disseminated widely. We will be one very important place to share the outcomes and of the project. Will be an annual workshop that is run and that already exists. And this is a series of workshops run by IUCN and with the support of the French Biodiversity Agency, the workshop on the high seas, where we will have an opportunity to connect with all other initiatives and all people involved in this. And of course, that involves a lot of communication. So that is just a brief outlook of the structure of the project, how we want to implement it, develop it, and I will, with my colleague, will respond to all your questions if you want more details. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denis. Joël, maybe I let you make the moderation.
You can continue if you want, but
no, I was just in my just to specify, as Janique Etienne mentioned it in the chat, that in the FFEM steering committee there are 4 French ministries, which make a really interesting selection process, and 2 of them are involved in the SARGADOM project. So it's the French Ministry for Ecological Transition and the Foreign Affairs Ministry. And Joël, I'll let you continue with the agenda, please.
Thank you, Peña. So yeah, now we're gonna go in more like into the methodological part of the project, of the different components. And mainly we're gonna go deeper into the component 2 of the project. And so the first presentation after Denis is the Laurie Kell from the Imperial College, which is gonna go through the DPSIR framework, which is gonna be the framework which is gonna use to unify the strategic plan of how we're gonna handle all the data on the 2 sides. So try to work together using this framework. So I give you the floor, Laurie, and to explain us how it's going to work. Is it here? Not here.
Sorry, yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm just trying to share my screen. Bear with me a second, and
yeah, no worries. Take your time.
Just bear with me a second. Just view slideshow. Okay, start from first slide. Okay, I'm sorry, no, I've got the wrong slide here. So just give me a second. So I just got there's confusion with the slides here.
You need any help?
No, I'm just, it's my own computer I'm having the problem with. I'm just, let me just get this open up. Give me a second. Apologize for this. Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, I've got it now, yeah. Sorry. So I just have to share, don't I? Okay. I think that's it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you see my slide now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to speak about the driver pressure state impact response. And I'm speaking on behalf of Imperial College, my colleagues there in the Centre for Environmental Policy, and also my colleagues who have worked in ICAT with Brian Luckhurst and Howard Grow. And the motivation for this was came from my work in ICAT, paid for by the Sargasso Sea Commission. And the main question was how to implement ecosystem-based fisheries management in areas beyond national jurisdiction. That's the interest of ICAT, and it was also the interest of the Sargasso Sea. How could the Sargasso Sea actually help in this important task to move from single species stock assessment and management to a broader based ecosystem-based fisheries management, which everybody thinks is a good idea, but very few people know how to actually implement it. So we've made quite a bit of progress in ICAT, which is responsible for managing the fisheries, the pelagic fisheries in areas beyond the national jurisdiction. And ICAT have recognized the importance of the Sargasso Sea, and they've actually adopted the Sargasso Sea as a case study to help operationalize ecosystem-based fisheries management. And what we mean by EBFM is it's a strategy to manage human activities that have an impact on the ecosystem. And the main fisheries there, the main impact is fisheries, but there's other potential impacts as well. And that's why the DPSIR framework is extremely useful. And Imperial have had quite a lot of experience in applying the DPSIR framework in marine systems, but also in terrestrial and other systems as well. So that's kind of my interest with Imperial College. I've worked with Imperial College for many years in the past when I was working both for the UK government, where I had to attend various regional fisheries management organisations on behalf of the UK government, but also when I was working for ICAT. I left the UK and I went to work for the ICAT Secretariat. So my experience is both working for national governments, but also for intergovernmental organisations. What ICAT have done as a first step towards trying to operationalise the ecosystem approach to fisheries management is developed what they call an ecosystem report card. And that at the moment is just trying to survey the various potential impacts on the fisheries in the Atlantic. And you can see it's concentrating mainly on the traditional fish stock assessment aspects. Retained and assessed species, they're the main species you might have heard of, like bluefin, big eye, yellowfin tropical tunas, swordfish, etc. But also sharks, because they're being impacted in the ICAT fisheries. And that's what we call by retained and not a fish species. Bycatch species include sharks, but also turtles, seabirds, marine mammals. ICAT are also trying to be more proactive and looking at the general impact of fishing pressure. Also, it's important to consider the environmental pressure also on the fisheries, and I'm involved in work on that. Look at the impacts of climate change and how to mitigate those impacts. Fishing itself has a big impact on greenhouse gas emissions, so that's an important factor that we have to consider as well. There's degradation of habitats in various ways, but we're also concerned about biodiversity, general community structure, trophic structure, but also the important thing about fisheries are that they are economic activities, and they do have an impact, as we've heard from Tammy and others, important for social security and also for social aspects and economic aspects as well. So, so coming from a fisheries background, that my main interest historically was in the main species, but that's broadened out to a much broader aspect, not just the main species, but how they interact with others, with the habitat, and also how they can impact on endangered, threatened, and protected species, but also, food security and economic and other aspects as well. So that ICAT is moving to have a broader based interest in the marine ecosystem, and they're struggling to do that, but they are moving forward. And my interface now has moved from the more fisheries orientated to the more broader based stuff, and that's why I'm now involved with Imperial College, trying to look at the broader aspects. And so a key thing about how to operationalize ecosystem-based fisheries management, well, for me, I think, and this is where the DPSIR framework comes in, it's important to develop first indicators that allow us to assess the state of this ecosystem, set management measures, and also monitor any response. And the first thing we have to do is to develop the management objectives, agree those with people, and people might be in conflict. Might find that different groups have different objectives. Conservation groups compared to fisheries, different fisheries are in conflict as well, just because you've got fishing companies and countries exploiting resource doesn't necessarily mean they're in total agreement. So we need to be able, once we've got those objectives, we need to be able to set reference points to define the, what are our targets, what are the limits to sustainability, and what to do to ensure that we don't exceed those limits. And that's the type of work I've traditionally been involved in fisheries management. But it's important that, that any indicators are proxies for ecosystem attributes and pressures. So there've got to be things which are important that we need to monitor and we need to try to manage or respond to. And a key thing is that any indicators that we do develop should be validated. They should actually be proxies for important attributes that we need to understand and we need to try to manage. And so the key thing there is, how do we develop indicators that tell us the state of the system, tell us how the any management has worked or not, and how do we do that? So that's how I kind of move towards the driver pressure state impact response framework, because you can see, I think, in ICAT with ecosystem report card that the mainly concerned now with the various pressures. They haven't got to the state where they can actually monitor whether the state is good or bad, whether it's having a negative impact, whether the response has been appropriate, and that the impact is that then things are moving in a positive direction. So you can see from my traditional single species fisheries assessment background that we realized that the driver pressure state impact response would allow us to go forward through time to develop a management system that would allow us to actually provide advice on the state, and if we find things are in a poor state, that we can then devise management measures, and hopefully we can monitor the impact of those management measures. And importantly, that the ecosystem report card of ICAT was developed following an exercise based on the driver pressure ecosystem services response on ecosystem response framework, basically the DPSIR with a few different tweaks to it. So what we did is that we came along and applied the driver pressure state impact response framework that ICAT had adopted for developing the ecosystem report card, and then basically only really got through to the first two steps. They'd recognize that ecosystem-based fisheries management has to look at broad social and economic aspects, and they tried to map the main pressures, but they haven't got as far as trying to use those, develop indicators to monitor the pressures, and then be able to make statements about what is the situation. Is the situation good, bad, indifferent? Is it improving? Is it getting worse? And that's the state we are with ICAT at the moment. And there's going to be a meeting later this year where we're going to start developing, hopefully, a more coherent framework for monitoring the impact of the fisheries in the Atlantic. And hopefully then once we can show people that there is a negative impact, that then we can get people to agree what the appropriate response is. And I think that's where the Sargasso Sea Commission has come in, because the Sargasso Sea Commission isn't a management body, it's a stewardship body. But the Sargasso Sea Commission can help in actually showing people that the things are getting worse, and then hopefully work to improve things and show that things are getting better. So to me, I think although the Sargasso Sea Commission has a stewardship role, what I think of stewardship really, because I mean we've discussed stewardship in many occasions about what does that mean, but to me I think stewardship is putting a sharp point on a stick and sticking it in somebody's eye when they don't see what the problem is. So hopefully that's what the DPSIR framework is going to allow us to do in the future. So I think at the moment we're just in those initial, we're just in the initial D and the P. But I think what we're going to hopefully be able to do is start developing indicators that allow us to assess the state that people can agree on. And once they agree on those, that the next objectives are to actually hopefully apply some of the appropriate management action. And so, as I said, that the ecosystem report code of ICAT was developed following an exercise based on the DPSIR framework, based on a modified DPSIR framework. And then what we did is we conducted DPSIR analysis for the Sargasso Sea to ensure consistency with ICAT. And for ICAT, we concentrated on fishing, climate change, and some other aspects. But the DPSIR framework could easily be extended and not just to ICAT, but to other management bodies as well. So we could apply it and communicate with NAFO, North Atlantic Fisheries Organization, also European management bodies who are concerned with eels, but also bodies with responsibility for mining or shipping or biodiversity. So that the DPSIR framework was very well received in ICAT, and nobody complained about us overstepping our role, because the Sargasso Sea Commission, as I said, isn't a management body, and that's a potential problem if people in ICAT think that the Sargasso Sea was overstepping its role, taking responsibility for things that it didn't have the remit for, and that's been said in many occasions in various meetings, but we've always turned around and said, no, we're not trying to take over the management role, we're just trying to help with you developing indicators, and we offer the Sargasso Sea as a case study, and that's been well accepted by people in ICAT and other RFMOs as well, who are highly supportive with us for the Jeff project. And so what we'd hope to do, based on the initial work with the DPSIR framework, which was well accepted in the fisheries arena, was extend to other threats. Not just fishing, but garbage, pollution, climate change, underwater noise, sargassum harvesting, if that's potentially a problem, exotic species, deep sea mining, underwater cables, tourism. So although we started out with the, with just related to ecosystem-based fisheries management, we have been extending the DPSIR framework to show, well, if it's appropriate for fishing, why can't we apply the same framework and the same type of tools and steps to a broader range of threats and pressures? So that was being very well received in the last year. And so I just repeated it. So just summarizing that while that, for ICAT, we concentrate on the environment and fishing. We also showed how the approach would be extended to, a broader range of drivers, and also importantly stakeholders, because the process has to be related to the social and economic aspects. So it's not a pure scientific aspect. It has to, we have to engage with the stakeholders and the different management bodies. And so, I'll just skip over these quickly, but to me, we recognize the Sargasso Sea is important for biodiversity. That there's also, there's a link between the environment and environmental pressures and fishing pressure as well. And that's why we need to collaborate with people who understand the oceanography. Although, say in ICAT, that the level of knowledge about the fishing activities for people who aren't actually involved with that fishing fleet or from that country is not very good. But the actual the biology and the oceanography is very detailed. It's not just because somebody's reporting a catch from a 5 degrees square in the middle of the Atlantic doesn't necessarily mean that it's not having an impact on turtles who are, who actually, whose actual behavior and distribution is going to be linked to detailed oceanographic processes. So, for instance, what we heard about the Pacific Dome, that the area is going to change. In an area like the Sargasso Sea, that you can't put hard and fast boundaries in because it depends upon the changes in environment. So how can we have some form of management that would allow people to fish, but ensure that the stocks are sustainable, the target stocks are sustainable, but there's a minimum impact in the non-target species as well. So that's a key issue, and I think that's how we, by working with people like Duke University and Global Fishing Watch and BIOS and others, hopefully that we can come up with an understanding of the interactions between the target species, the fishing fleets, and the oceanography, and also important distribution of seabirds, etc. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do. We're hoping to extend the traditional fisheries management into a more broad, holistic approach. But we're not trying to do everything at once. We're trying to make small steps, but make sure those small steps are going in the right direction. And if we can make some successes based on improving ecosystem-based fisheries management, then then it'll allow us to then come along and broaden out the management of the Sargasso Sea. And finally, what we also did as part of the DPSIR framework, as I said, that it's really important that we're not just doing this as a scientific exercise, that we need to collaborate with others, collaborate with stakeholders who might have conflicting objectives, work with stakeholders who might be from different management bodies with different responsibilities. So it's a potential, legal minefield, but hopefully if we adopt a common framework and engage with the appropriate management bodies and stakeholders from the beginning, that we'll be able to move forward, hopefully at a reasonable speed. And so this is just some results from a elicitation exercise where we went out and asked people what they how they thought the DPSIR framework could help and what their main concerns were. And these are some of the responses that we got. And I think the key thing that I got from this is, and this is to echo Howard's comments at the end of his talk, is we've got to stop talking and we've got to do something. And that's really important. But once we do something, we've got to show that, I think, that we're doing something that's useful. It's not a scientific exercise. It's something actually is useful because we're developing ways that the pressures can be monitored, that people can agree appropriate management action, and then we can respond. Then we can hopefully measure the appropriate response. So that's why I think the DPSIR framework is really helpful. And I say we're just at the beginning. We're just maybe doing the drivers and pressures. But the next step hopefully is be able to work with people like Duke and Global Fishing Watch and others, and also work with closely with our colleagues in the Pacific, and hopefully be able to come up with the next step, which is be able to come up with indicators that allow us to monitor the state, that we can then go and talk to people and show, look, there is a problem, we need to agree to do something. And then hopefully if management action is implemented, we'll then be able to go and show whether management actions are actually having a response. So that's why I think the DPSIR framework is very, very useful. It allows, it's going to allow us to collaborate, across disciplines, across management bodies, and across regions. So thank you.
Thank you very much for this great presentation, and I think it puts the line very high. So now we just we just have a few talks more before doing something, but thank you very much for the presentation. And maybe, do you have I don't know if you have any question, but since we are quite short on time, maybe we can wait like 3 presentation and take all the questions together for the partners, except if you have a really burning question at the moment. But thank you very much, Rory. And then we're gonna take the next presentation. Pat Halpin is here, hopefully, so you can start to share your screen if you can. Thank you very much. So Pat Halpin is going to present the work which is going to be done in collaboration, I guess, between the Duke University and Global Fishing Watch, related to the data discovery and analysis to support enhanced management and governance for the 2 sites together.
Excellent. Can everyone hear me okay and see my slides at this point?
Yeah, everything is perfect.
Fantastic. So very pleased to be able to speak to this group this afternoon or evening, depending where you are. The presentation we're going to give involves a number of colleagues and collaborators, and so want to make sure we reach out to them. Someone should mute their mic. We're getting some typing there. Thank you. So our portion of this project is dealing with data discovery and analysis and synthesis of information to support the overall projects for both the Sargasso Sea and Costa Rica Thermal Dome. It involves our lab here at Duke University, the Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab, and a number of research staff and students who will be working on this project. In addition, we have close colleagues in partnership with Global Fishing Watch. Paul Woods, who was on the call, I think just had to drop off, but Matt is still on the call. So 2 close colleagues who we're working with on this as well. So we're doing a joint presentation here. First off, just to introduce our colleagues, Global Fishing Watch is an international NGO that uses big data, machine learning, remote sensing, and AIS data to track vessels, and specifically looking at fishing vessels to interpret the movement and behavior of fishing vessels, and provides a lot of transparency for global oceans. So areas that cannot be seen now can be exposed and seen. And so this really helps with transparency, many novel research projects going on based on this, and more hopefully sustainable use of our oceans. So we're very pleased to be working as collaborators with GFW on this work. My lab, the Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab, works at what we call the intersection of marine science, technology, management, and governance. We try to create applied research that directly informs policy and management. And so we've been working at this for a number of years. We do a lot of data analysis, a lot of modeling, and we have some flagship data sets and projects that we've been working on and ramping up that we think will directly inform both the Sargasso Sea and Costa Rica Thermal Dome projects. So one of them is a project that we're undertaking right now called MICO, the Migratory Connectivity of the Oceans program, which is developing information and knowledge on migratory species from around the world, including marine mammals, sea turtles, seabirds, but also oceanic sharks and other species. In addition, the OBIS CMAP, which is actually a data center that deals with all the same species, so marine mammals, seabirds, sea turtles, and now also pelagic shark species, has been stood up for 20 years and supplies information to the Ocean Biogeographic Information System at IOC. And so we're one of the longest standing data centers for that. And so we also feel that these efforts, long-term efforts, will directly support our activities. So just to zoom in on one slide on the MICO project, this project looks at connectivity of ocean species and ecosystems. And we feel that this will help us not just look at activities of species in these regions, but it will help us talk about the relationships and the importance of these two high seas regions to other parts of the world. And I just have one slide here, an example of looking at mako sharks and looking at some patterns of the connectivity for different ecoregions. And we have many, many species, and this is evolving, but it will start to show the connectivity and connections where you might be focusing in on the thermal dome or the Sargasso Sea, but it may be influencing activities of important and threatened species that might be traveling to many other jurisdictions around the world. And I think this kind of teleconnection, the connection to other places, is going to become very important in both these projects. So first off, I really think that our role here is to look at both the Sargasso Sea and thermal dome as examples of dynamic oceanographic ecosystems. And because they're dynamic ecosystems, they must be carefully defined and characterized. So they're not individual features. It's not like a set of seamounts or a coral reef, something that's fixed in space and time. They migrate around in the oceans. They're ambulatory, they move, they're dynamic, and they change quite often between seasons, between years, between decades. And so we really need to provide the baseline synthesis to be able to really say, what is the Sargasso Sea? What is the Costa Rica thermal dome? Where is it? How is it functioning? What's the baselines to compare to? And we need to do this because you need to do this in order to do dynamic ocean management, which has also come up. Our lab has been working on these processes for a number of years, and we also did work with the Convention on Biological Diversity to facilitate the scientific and technical workshops that actually describe both these sites as significant areas. So we've been working with both of these regions for quite a number of years. And we think that this also will help us with the characterization and synthesis work we have to do into the future. So I'm going to go through very rapidly some of the tasks that we have listed in our project proposal and talk about them and how they relate to other portions of the project. So first off is where we have 3 tasks that are looking at ecosystem diagnostic analysis and really to describe the dynamic features and their spatiotemporal variability. And so here, it's not just collecting oceanographic data or biological data, it's trying to do some synthesis to say, well, what does it mean? What are the characteristics? And so that's one piece of our project, and this is for both sites. Another is to think about some new indices that could be created, and we're looking at some existing ones on dynamic pelagic seascapes, models of Sargasso Sea, on floating algae from remote sensing, ecological marine units, which is a way to think about the ocean characterization in 3 dimensions. So instead of just looking at the surface, looking at the water column as well. And really these things, the deliverables we would be producing are descriptions of the features and the spatial variability. We just heard a presentation on the DPSIR process. And so one of the explicit goals of our portion of the project is to provide synthetic information to help to hand off to Imperial College and to Laurie's work that he just was presenting on this, on environmental and human uses and how we can synthesize those so they could be put into that driver pressure state impact response framework. And so we feel like there's, the raw data needs to be processed into some information that can be useful in these processes. And finally, we want to synthesize existing research and information. So we're going to be looking at these new indices, trying to put together data, technical reports, workshop presentations, and hopefully at least one, if not more, peer-reviewed publications that could be used and cited in the future. Now, to deliver the outcomes of this project, we're going to be working as well, including synthesizing data, but also standing up a project website and some data discovery portals. and really to facilitate some of the science communications and the data discovery and interoperability. And there's many different partners, and many of them already work in this field. So we have partners from NASA and the Coverage Project, partners with Global Fishing Watch, partners from many, many organizations as well. So a lot of this is going to be, how do we do this in a way that doesn't create redundant information systems? How do we do this efficiently and use existing resources as much as possible? So one of the things that we'll be working on jointly with our colleagues at Global Fishing Watch is to be able to characterize fishing effort and vessel traffic. And so the diagram there is looking at some fishing effort data, recent fishing effort data, focusing in on the Atlantic. But also we're working with Global Fishing Watch on a tool and platform they've been developing that they're calling their Marine Manager tool. And this second diagram here is showing an example from the Galapagos region. And it's a platform that they're standing up to look at bringing together dynamic information to include vessel tracking and fisheries information together. And so this is just an example here in the Caribbean Atlantic, and looking at the current state of this tool, which is bringing things together to try to take complex information and put it into a platform that could be used. So we're exploring this to see if this might be a useful case for high seas examples of using these similar kinds of platforms. Now, next, the tools itself can be used to work with dynamic data, as well as can bring in global data sets. So that's one of the things we find attractive. The Marine Manager portal data layers will be able to bring together human activity data, oceanographic data, as well as biological data. So we feel like there's a lot of already created structure here. And we're working currently right now on another project looking at bringing in migratory species data and information. So we feel like this is a nice convergence. So just to wrap up our general process, we really feel that since the Sargasso Sea and Costa Rica Thermal Dome are dynamic oceanographic systems, ecosystems, that both the ecosystem features and their human uses have to be defined and characterized and synthesized for us to be able to go on to the other steps of this project. And so our role in this is to try to work as in that middle portion of taking raw information and trying to raw data and trying to turn that into better, more refined information that can answer these questions. So that's just a quick overview of what we're planning to do, and we're very excited to move forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think this is really exciting to see like everything which become possible and see how we can start to understand better the complexity of the different systems. I don't know if anybody has a question. If not, maybe I can ask you one. When you're talking about, when you say about talking about characterization of the two systems and manage in a dynamic way, when you're talking about characterization, do you think you speak in terms of like physical characterization, or taking into account also like biodiversity into account in terms of characterization of the system?
So here we're thinking in terms of physical oceanographic characterization, as well as biological and ecological characterization. So the phenology of the sites as the change in productivity throughout the year and also trends over time. But then on top of that, layering on top of that is also characterizing human use. So vessel tracking, fisheries work, effort in a much more explicit way. And so it's really 3 levels, from physical to biological to human use.
Thank you very much. I think it's a great chance to have you and Global Fishing Watch working together on the 2 sides at the same time. It's going to really help for the coordination and the advance of the project. So if there is no other questions right now, we can have it in the general discussion. But we can take the last presentation before we have the general discussion. So the last presentation is from Nick Bates from BIOS. So you're going to talk to us about the acceleration of the surface physical and biochemical changes in the Sargasso Sea. So thank you very much for accepting to give the talk, and I'll let you the floor. Thank you.
Thanks, Joelle. Let me make sure this is working. So is that fine? Everyone can see the video?
Yep.
Yeah, perfectly.
That's great. Well, thank you again for inviting me to talk about data and observations in the Sargasso Sea. And I think one of the things that we're beginning to recognize is that there is a substantial change going on in the Sargasso Sea in the physics and biology that supports the higher trophic levels. And so what's happening to nutrients primary production is going to have an impact on the higher trophic levels. Turtles, fish, sharks, etc. So most of this is this talk is based on a paper that we published just about 7 months ago in Nature, Communications in Earth and Environment. And for the Sargasso Sea Alliance Commission, we will at BIOS be updating the science case. What is the current status of the Sargasso Sea with respect to its physics, its chemical oceanography, its biological oceanography, and the biogeochemical cycles and air-sea interactions in the Sargasso Sea. And I'll come back to this slide again at the end of it. It's a very busy slide. But what we're really beginning to realize is there's a substantial change. And have we passed a threshold is the question we're trying to answer at present. So we have off Bermuda been measuring the oceans from surface to deep at Hydrostation S for nearly 70 years. It is the longest time series we have on ocean physics and oxygen, the changes from sustained observations by ships that we have on the planet. In 1988, we expanded that remit to look at more of the biogeochemistry, the export production, and many other parameters in the ocean. And that effort has been funded by the US National Science Foundation. So we typically measure, do our observations bi-weekly at Hydrostation S, and probably about 16 to 17 times a year at Station BATS. And so that it is a representative suites, conditions in the ocean, the physics, the chemistry, and the biology. And so I'll present some of the kind of seasonal data, the trends that are occurring in the Sargasso Sea that will have implications elsewhere. So we have seen a lot of warming in the Sargasso Sea. And from about 1983 to present, we've seen periods of warming and cooling, but a warming generally just about less than 1 degree Celsius. And the red colors in left plot basically show you the warm temperatures over 25 degrees in the Sargasso Sea. One of the really interesting things is that in the last decade, we have seen an increase of 0.1 degrees Celsius, which is a lot. The heat content of the ocean in the Sargasso Sea is changing significantly and rapidly. One of the things that has happened is that the winter season is now shorter by nearly a month, and the summer period where the oceans are warmer than 25 degrees by nearly a month. And so this has implications for both the Sargasso Sea and for the populations close, to hurricane landfall The island of Bermuda is impacted by hurricanes, and this extra heat content allows for, you know, a longer period of hurricane development, more impacts, higher frequency, stronger winds, more transition between the tropical and the subtropical and the subpolar atmospheric conditions. And so it's a generation of hurricane cyclone development. In addition to that 1 degree increase in the last decade, we actually have a tide gauge which shows that the average sea level rise is about 2.2 millimeters per year since records were made. But there are also ways to go back and using historic photographs from 1870. We know that the sea level rise from 1870 to about 2007 was 31 centimeters. But in the last decade, we have seen a quadrupling of sea level rise, nearly 10 centimeters. So along with warming, we've seen nearly 10 centimeters of sea level rise in the past 10 years. Something has really changed. We've also seen salinification, which means that the ocean is getting saltier. So that this is an example of the reorganization of the global water cycle, places where there's rain, places where there's evaporation. And that increase in the Sargasso Sea is about 0.14 in the last decade, which doesn't sound a lot, but has extraordinary impacts on latent heat, heat content storage, etc., circulation patterns, etc. In the last 60 years or so, the ocean has lost oxygen. So for the past 40 years, the Sargasso Sea in the surface, in the mixed layer euphotic zone, has lost nearly 10% of its oxygen content. And that, I'll show you, has partly related to some of the primary production changes that we've seen in the Sargasso Sea. So this is the kind of at the sharp end, so to speak, of climate change, environmental change. We're seeing it in the Sargasso Sea, and particularly in the last 10 years. What is not known very well scientifically is the fact that, you know, the responses of the biology and the ecosystem to warming and planetary change is not well known. We think that when the ocean warms, stratification occurs and primary production decreases, and the export of organic carbon to the deep ocean, the storage of anthropogenic CO2 in the deep ocean will decrease. But that's not what's happening in the Sargasso Sea and elsewhere, we think. We think what's happening is that, yes, net primary production is decreasing, which means that the contribution of phytoplankton and their growth to oxygen content is reducing. So this is partly responsible for that 8.8% decrease in oxygen. But export is still continuing, and in fact has increased. And this is not what our climate models that underpin the IPCC reports would suggest. You would suggest with decreasing NPP, you would see a decrease in export of organic carbon. We see the reverse. And that's from one of only 2 long-time series observing in the global ocean. So we have to really rethink the way the ocean functions. And this is, you know, a change in the ecosystem that is a result of the changes in the use of phosphorus and nitrate and how phytoplankton are cycling these nutrient elements. And we're going to smaller cell size. So we're changing the community structure in the base of the ecology from larger cells to smaller cells. And so the complete change in the efficiency of the Sargasso Sea biology. And what we've noticed in the last 10 years, and the bottom panel is probably just, typical net prime production in the Sargasso Sea is 150 grams of carbon per meter squared per year. In the last decade, that has reduced by 50%. What's the implications for that? It has implications for all of the higher trophic levels. It even has implications for our coral reefs. We have a healthy coral reef in Bermuda, and the less biomass that there is around in the Sargasso Sea, the less comfortable corals are in that environment. They're already experiencing ocean acidification. Now they have less food to feed on, energy requirements, and we're already seeing periods of net dissolution in our healthy coral reef. Ocean CO2 is also being taken up, and in the past decade, that increase of anthropogenic CO2 stored in the oceans, changing the ocean's chemistry, has increased. And ocean acidification is occurring in the Sargasso Sea, and it is one of the few places that we've actually been able to measure this. And this is, in fact, the longest time series we have anywhere on the ocean, anywhere in the planet on ocean acidification, 40 years, and sustained observations. And what it tells you is that the chemistry of the Sargasso Sea today is completely different and outside of the range of the chemical conditions that were present in the 1980s and 1990s. So organisms that calcify, that underpin the whole trophic system, coral reefs, are experiencing a completely different chemical condition now. It's only 30 years later. So that of course has profound implications for both the Sargasso Sea and for, more parochially for the coral reefs of Bermuda and its future. So these are the kind of changes that we're going to sort of deal with in synthesizing what the current status of the Sargasso Sea is. How is its biology, its chemistry, its physics functioning, and how quickly is it changing? And hopefully I've been able to show you that it is changing profoundly and quickly, and much more quickly than we expected. And the warming and the sea level rise, the quadrupling of that in the last decade, I think is kind of a clarion call for action, because here's where we are at the sharp end of environmental change. Anyway, that's it for me.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I have to say thank you. It's quite depressing, but
that's the way it is.
You have to take the floor after that. But yeah, indeed, it's an amazing time series, and really helps to understand what's going on if we still need to approve for it. David, do you want to raise your questions?
Yes, please. It was a comment as much as it was more a comment, really. So first of all, to thank Laurie and Pat and Nick for their presentations. I mean, we've been talking about this for some time. You've put your, we were hoping to start at the beginning of the year. You heard, I hope, at the beginning that we've now signed the main contract, so we can actually start with this. But seeing those presentations shows how important this work is that we're going to do. I'm sorry that Nick's presentation at the end was so depressing, but it's also, it's an opportunity for us to raise this issue on a much higher level than just, if you like, just our project, because this is all we're doing, I think, is of global significance. So my thanks to you very much for that, and we're looking forward to starting work with you. I don't really have a question, so thank you very much. I just wanted to thank you guys.
That's quite important too. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. You can take the floor. You can write your question in the chat. But I think it's really amazing to see like all the presentation and all the pieces of the puzzle coming, and how we can. So it's going to take energy to collaborate all together and take the time to understand each other and try to really put all the energy in one direction and to go on all together. But I think the presentation we have seen today really show like the power of what we can do. So it's really exciting. You want
I do actually have a question. I've thought, I mean, it's an obvious one, but is there anything, I mean, very comprehensive, all three. Is there anything that we've missed? Is there anything that we should be looking at that we haven't actually, in this first initial data gathering stage, is there anything, Nick suggested that we probably should include coral reefs in the work they're doing, which we hadn't in the initial plan. Is there anything else that we should be looking at that we haven't envisaged in our work plan? See, Pat.
Yeah, Pat.
Yes, I think it's something may not add. I mean, we could make it as big as we wanted to, but one thing that I think could be useful is during this initial phase, if as we identify, and I'm sure we will identify many gaps in physical data, biological data, human use data, that we try to capture that and see if we can pass that along to the evolving Decade of Ocean Science or other platforms to see if we could actually address those. I think there's opportunities to do that, and it may not take too much extra effort to see if we can create that pipeline. And I think that would also be attractive for the BBNJ process as well, to show that we're, learning, as we learn, we immediately try to get these priorities put into a process.
Thanks. I see Nick is.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the linkages between, Laurie and Pat's talks were fascinating. And, obviously my talk and what we do at BIAS is really focused on the lower trophic level, ecology, physics, etc. But it's kind of transmitting that linkage, connecting together, I think is really important. And, when it comes down to it, how do we communicate that change? We got the visceral response of, well, that's really depressing, climate change. And the common question will be, well, what do I do as an individual to try and mitigate that? What actions do I take? And so I think what we're really missing is that kind of, outreach of information that we can communicate to sort of the broader public as well as the policymakers. Obviously we engage with the policymakers here, and there is this cross-fertilization, but it's presenting the reality of where we are as a planet, and how do we assess, current status, future status, and embedding that communication in what we're tasked with going forward.
Okay, thanks. I don't know if Laurie's still on. He's on. Is he still? Are you still there, Laurie? Have you any comment? You're on mute.
Okay. Yes. Yep. Thanks. That's why I think the DPSIR framework's important. I think the presentations by Nick and Pat were very important, and I think for me the challenge is how can we work with each other? How can we actually collaborate with each other? How can we actually show people that there is something that we need to respond to? And how do we get agreement across different management bodies and with different stakeholders to actually agree to do something? Once we agree to do something, how do we actually show that what we're doing is worthwhile? Because we're going to have to take, because people are going to have to make sacrifices, but we could have to agree that the sacrifices are worthwhile. and that we're doing something useful. And that's why I think the DPSIR framework has the elements in. And I think we're only at the very beginning, but I think if we can collaborate across the disciplines and across the people with different backgrounds and different interests, and we can collaborate between the Atlantic and the Pacific, I think we'll have a really good example of how things should be done. So I think it's really exciting. And I have probably more questions than I have any answers. Actually, I don't have any answers, but as I said, I think what we need to do with the Sargasso Sea, we have to make sure that that we translate stewardship into that sharp stick that we can stick in somebody's eye when they don't see what's happening. So that's just a personal rather than scientific viewpoint.
Yeah, thanks. I think, I mean, just a comment. I mean, I think one of the things that we're going to be faced with is, I mean, Nick's presentation was fantastic. It is depressing, but the worry is that we see this as like a global process that we don't have any control of at a local level. Whereas we're going to be talking to, ICAP, we're going to be talking to NAFO, we're going to be talking to Seabed Authority, or IMO actually. So what are the local impacts of the sort of activities? A huge increase in marine traffic through the Sargasso Sea. So what are those impacts which are contributing to this? It's not just major cities of the world burning too much carbon. It's actually, there are local activities which are likely to be having some impact as well. That's what we're going to have to produce evidence of to convince these bodies, these regional, systemic bodies to actually take some actions. But we've got a tremendous team, so thank you again all very much for that.
Thank you, David. I think there is a question from Leanne Henry. I don't know if you want to take the floor, but I can take your question if you want. She's asking if in the project VME are going to indicator taxa would be included in this project. So I don't, especially for the Sargasso Sea or for the thermal dome. I don't know if maybe Pat Halpin, do you have an answer to that, or do you want?
Just for clarity, so she's asking about VMEs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Pat seems to take an answer.
So, and we're still in the early stages of defining what are the physical and biological data to be synthesized, but I feel that is a great linkage, and it also is a great linkage to the existing management of VMEs with the RFMOs. I mean, if the more information we can tie into ongoing processes, I think would be great. Also in the Sargasso Sea, it'd be lots of avenues to bring in colleagues in the Atlantic project and others where there's overlap. So, so I think there's many opportunities to look at VMEs as indicators. So I think that's a good area to explore.
Could I just thank you, Pat? Could I just add? I mean, one of our partners in this project is NOAA through Okeanos. They were just recently on the Corner Rise Sea chain, and they actually had fantastic photography of the ocean bottom. They discovered an awful lot of possibly exploitable minerals, which we probably want to keep quiet about, but they also discovered some lovely, absolutely beautiful, but really important species, including, we're told, a few new ones, which we've put up on our website, so we can give a bit of a plug for that. But that's the sort of partnership where hopefully we can get some traction as well.
And Nick, can you tell us when the report is going to be released?
We haven't paid them yet. We haven't started.
No, but you described all the chapters, and so it's almost done.
Well, there is an ongoing, obviously we're funded by NSF, and so there's a lot of work that's going on so as part of BATS and Hydrostation S. And so some of the efforts on the biology and how that's changing, hopefully will be published within a couple of months, 3 months maybe. The reports, the chapters and the synthesis, updating the Sargasso Sea knowledge, we hope sometime next year. So it will take some time to put together and really think about how things have changed Are we just seeing decadal changes, or have we passed the threshold?
Yeah, thank you very much. So we are hoping, so you can tell us more about it in a few months, and we're gonna waiting to read the big synthesis. But and I don't know if maybe Christina, you want to take the floor, or I think indeed it's quite important to try to raise the awareness and use all the international COP to express what we are going to do all together, and try to explain to the majority of the people, the decision makers, what we're going to do. But I think we will have a nice opportunity in the IUCN Congress in Marseille. That will be the first step. I don't know if Fania, you want to tell something about that, or as maybe to conclude, or Janique?
I don't know if Janique wants to present quickly the main points or the main projects that will be presented. In a few words, yeah,
I've already presented them in my introduction, because I spoke about Tara Foundation and the project with Tara on plankton. And also I spoke about the project with IUCN on seamounts. And the next one is our project, SARGADOM. So I don't know if you want to add something.
Indeed, we will have the opportunity to bring together the outcomes from the existing projects and the perspectives from ours. And the idea is to have a roundtable on how these projects enable to bring science in support to the decision-making processes, and to design tools also for the protection of marine ecosystems. So that's a very first point. Wow, a very first contribution to the FFEM strategy from the SARGADOM partnership. And while we are frustrated, we won't be all together in Marseille, but maybe some few will be there. And well, I hope also that in the future we will really be able to have the workshops and the meetings, because it remains important for progressing on the activities and the actions we have to implement. Well, we are close to the end. I don't know if there are other questions. Most of the questions in the chat have been discussed. We don't have a conclusion speech, as this is the very beginning for our SARGADOM history. And you have been very, very patient, because we could have made a break, and you have been very concentrated all over the very rich presentations. So thank you very much for your interest and for your contributions, and very happy to continue working with you and see all the developments. So I suggest to finish now at this point, and I just can tell you in French, à bientôt, see you soon for the rest of for next steps.
À bientôt. Thank you, everybody. That's wonderful.
Bye-bye then.
Bye, Fina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody.
Yes. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Promise.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Great work.
Yes, great work. Enjoyed it tremendously. Very educational.
Thanks, Fina. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you also because you contributed also to make it dynamic.
Great. Okay, bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow anyway. And maybe tomorrow we make a break for the steering committee.
Talk more over email then. Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.